So Tyson Fury gave his first interview since the Oleksandr Usyk defeat. And obviously, he said a lot of things, but basically, in the interview, he said that he's watched the fight back several times and still feels that he won the fight, that it was easy, that Oleksandr Usyk wasn't as good as he thought he would be, and that really only the 8th round, the 9th round, which was a 10-8 round, and round number 10, they're the only rounds that Usyk won. And he feels like he won the fight. He feels like he has to knock Usyk out next time around because he's not going to get a decision, insinuating that politics are playing a factor, obviously with the conflict in Usyk's country, which I said at the time, and I'll reiterate it again, is a really, really scummy thing to say, horrible thing to say. And Fury showed me that he hasn't learned an ounce. He hasn't learned anything from this defeat. He hasn't looked at what he did wrong and said, okay, I need to address these things, right? Certainly he's not saying that when he's being asked about it. And there's a saying I've said on here several times over the years from George Santayana, and it's those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Tyson Fury is not learning from history. He's not learning from his mistakes. And it's really interesting because about a month or so ago, about a couple of weeks anyway, I was probably read about a week or so after Fury fought Usyk and lost. And we seen the excuses that were being talked about, you know, the Isaac Low IQ coming out and saying, it didn't look like a cross, Usyk was kissing between rounds. You had, you know, Usyk had a broken jaw. Usyk had this. He only got the decision because of the conflict. You hear all this, all the yes men in Team Fury, and you see it, and you're like, it's reminiscent to Deontay Wilder when Wilder lost to Fury in 2020. And I said at the time, wasn't that long ago, that it's like Fury has now traded places with Deontay Wilder. Fury, when he beat him back in 2020, I was saying, like, Deontay Wilder, originally at the time, it wasn't Wilder who was, you know, he did make some claims, but he wasn't saying Fury cheated or anything like that until later on in the year. But even when he did, I was like, no, he didn't cheat. You just were beaten by the better man on the night. It happens. And I thought that if and when it happened to Fury, he would take it a little bit better. But clearly he hasn't. And he's doing pretty much what Deontay Wilder has done. Or is he? Because for me, I just have to look at what's gone on and the things Fury's been saying. And a part of me is like, does he really genuinely truly believe that? Because if he truly believes that he was in control of the fight, which the punch stats will tell you he wasn't, you only have to go and watch the fight. Well, I've watched it several times, and Fury is saying it was a 9-3 type fight. And yeah, do you know something? I agree with him. I can see it being a 9-3 type fight, 9 rounds to 3, but not in Tyson Fury's favour. The only really rounds you can comfortably give Tyson Fury, 4, 5, and 6. You could maybe give him a share of round 12, maybe. But every other round it was Oleksandr Usyk. The first 3 rounds, you look at them in the cold light of day, they're pretty easy to score, and they're Usyk rounds, simple as. So when he says 9-3, yeah, I can see it for Oleksandr Usyk, not for Tyson Fury. And as I said, if he really truly believes that that's what happened, well then, I'll talk about that now in a wee bit. But I was looking at it again, the interview, and I was like, he can't truly believe what he's saying. And a part of me is wondering, is Fury looking at this rematch and thinking that this is the last hurrah, and that he wants to maybe get all eyes on it? If he wins, happy days, but if he loses, he's going out with a big payday. Maybe try and get as many eyes on it, something like that, and maybe to try and, you know, there's the old saying, if you say a lie enough, if you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. And for Fury to keep saying, I got robbed, that maybe in his mind he's hoping that people will look at it and be like, oh yeah, Fury got hard done on the scorecards, oh, this rematch is going to be interesting, maybe we'll have fair judges, and Fury's going for the kill, oh, this is going to be even better. Maybe he's hoping to do that, because if you think about it, when they had their first fight, Wilder and Fury, it was an alright fight, it was a good fight, it was decent, and a lot of people, myself included, felt that Fury won. And because of that, because of the controversy of the fight, and obviously there was controversy because a lot of people felt that Fury should have been counted out in round number 12, it meant that when the rematch happened just over a year later, there was a lot more intrigue about it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the rematch out of all 3 fights at Wilder did the best in terms of finance, buy rates and everything. I correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe it was the rematch that did the best out of all 3, because there was a lot of intrigue about that fight. There was a lot of eyes on it. There was a lot of eyes. Maybe he's hoping to try and emulate that with Oleksandr Usyk. I don't think it'll work, because he was right, Tyson Fury, that a lot of people felt that, and he handled it. If you think about it like this, it's really strange if you think about it, because Fury, in my opinion, won the first fight with Deontay Wilder. He didn't get the decision, it was a draw, but he won it, in my opinion. And if you see how he reacted post-fight, there was none of this, oh, it was all political, it was all this. He was actually quite respectful. He was thanking the fans and saying, look, it wasn't our night tonight, it's not a loss. Do you remember? There's the interview, I'm sure it's still on TNT Sport. He actually handled it very well. And you could say, well, he handled it well because it wasn't a loss. It's a draw would feel like a loss if you went from where he was and boxed your heart out, was dropped twice, got back up twice, and felt that you did enough to win. It would feel like a loss. But he didn't handle it that way. He handled it with a lot. He was much more dignified. Contrast that a couple of years later, 5 or 6 years later, to Oleksandr Usyk, and polar opposite. And what's changed? Well, he's got a lot more yes men in. It's as simple as that. He's got a lot more yes men in, people who are gassing his head, telling him you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, you can do all this, that and the other. You know, all the yes men, the Gareth A. Davises, the Talk Sport, everyone at Talk Sport pretty much, it seems like, except maybe the likes of Adam Cattrall, people like that, they all just want to, you know, gas Fury's head up. And if he does go ahead with this rematch and he goes into it believing that, oh, it's an easy fight, you know, all I have to do is be better, all I have to do is knock him out, you know, he's only a middleweight, I broke his jaw, I broke his eye socket. And again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. Fury makes these outrageous claims with no evidence to back them up in the broken jaw and the broken eye socket. I mean, that's the first I heard of that. I mean, the broken jaw thing, Team Fury were saying that after the fight. It's clear that Usyk didn't have it. He was talking fine in the press conference. In fact, he was even Branchek, wasn't it, who was fighting in the States in the wee hours of the morning. Usyk was up happy, dancing around when he won his title. So, some broken jaw that was. But he makes these claims, and he goes on these platforms where he can just say what he wants. No one's going to question him. You know, when he did that snap press conference in Morecambe, all it was to list off reasons as to why Oleksandr Usyk can't win. And he was using examples like Evander Holyfield when he fought Lennox Lewis, not mentioning the fact that that was a way over the hill of Evander Holyfield who fought Lennox Lewis, and he brought up the fact that he fought Riddick Bowe and lost. Yeah, he did lose to Riddick Bowe, but he also beat Riddick Bowe, if you'll remember. And he really should have beaten him in the third fight as well. You know, that knockdown, that Riddick Bowe, so I think it was round 6, don't know how he survived that. But he leaves these little... Tyson Fury has an awful habit of doing these things, leaving these little snippets of information out. Because if you look there on screen, that's a TalkSport article. And it's about Andy Ruiz. He was talking about Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz, and about how the sweet science, the new science in boxing. You know, Anthony Joshua, the chiseled, ripped bodybuilder, the strength and conditioning guy, got beat by Andy Ruiz in 2019, and Ruiz was eating Snickers 2 weeks before the fight and jumped off the couch to fight him, insinuating basically that Ruiz had 2 weeks notice to fight Anthony Joshua. He came up off the couch and went in there and dropped him and knocked him out. No, that's not what happened. And Fury tried to push that narrative and was allowed to, and he'll say things like, oh, Ruiz took the fight on 2 weeks notice and beat Anthony Joshua. Well, in a roundabout way, yes, but in reality it wasn't like that at all. Andy Ruiz had about 2-3 weeks notice, yes, but what he conveniently leaves out is that Andy Ruiz, April 29th, I think it was. I can't remember. It might have been an Andre Berto show. I can't remember the exact main event, but it was a PBC show. It was Andy Ruiz's debut with PBC. He just left Top Rank. He fought Alexander Demitrhenko. I think it was a 10-rounder anyway. And he fought Alexander Demitrhenko, stopped him in a couple of rounds. I think Demitrhenko retired on a stool in that fight. Demitrhenko's about 6'5", 6'6", orthodox fighter from East Europe. I think he's German based. Well, I think he's retired now, but he was German based. I think he was German anyway. Very similar dimension to Anthony Joshua. He would have trained for about a month to 6 weeks prior to that fight. So that's April 2019. Has about a week off, gets the call for the Joshua fight, is straight back in. He'd just gone through a camp and then had another couple of weeks to prepare for Anthony Joshua, a guy who was not as good as Demitrhenko, a guy who was much better than Demitrhenko, but similar dimensions. He leaves that bit out. He says Oleksandr Usyk is a middleweight because you see there on screen, he fought in 2006 when he would have been about 19 years old at middleweight, which is not 160 pounds in the amateurs. It's about 165, closer to super middle. It's thereabouts. It's in around that. It's over the 160 pound limit. And to even insinuate now that Oleksandr Usyk is still a middleweight when he's coming into the ring 60 plus pounds heavier, all right, and he looks a heavyweight, he's a decent size heavyweight, certainly by 90 standards, he would definitely been a decent sized heavyweight. To actually say because he fought at middleweight when he was a teenager as an amateur is smoke and gun, and the Fury fans will just accept that. They'll accept anything he says is smoke and gun that he's a middleweight. Well, look at Sergey Kovalev's amateur background. Started his career in the year 2000, light welter. Then he went to middleweight. So Canelo Alvarez going up to 175 pounds and knocking out Sergey Kovalev, well, that's not really that good, is it? So Canelo basically beat a middleweight too, didn't he? Anthony Yarde got knocked out by a jab by a middleweight in Sergey Kovalev. Sergey Kovalev, went to light heavyweight, beat Bernard Hopkins, beat the likes, arguably, some people feel like he beat Andre Ward in the first fight. It's a bit of an indictment on Andre Ward, you pretty much got beat by a middleweight, didn't you? Bernard Hopkins getting beat by a middleweight. All these guys at light heavyweight getting beat by a middleweight in Sergey Kovalev, but no one's saying that because they know that was when he was a young kid in the amateurs. People will grow. People will grow into their bodies. Some will grow faster than others. It's the way it is. Oleksandr Usyk is a fully fledged heavyweight. Kovalev is pretty much a cruiserweight now, although he looks a bit fleshy a cruiserweight, but you get what I'm saying. Tyson Fury, if he genuinely believes in his heart of heart that he did nothing wrong in that first fight and that he's going to go into this rematch with Oleksandr Usyk, all he's going to have to do is just look for a knockout and pretty much do what he did last time. Well, he's in for a rude awakening. He's going to get stopped. When Wilder fought Fury in the trilogy fight, I worried would this happen. You can go back to some of the videos I did at the time back in 2021. Smaller channel back then, but I said that at the time I wondered would Wilder go into his box in the trilogy fight, because Wilder came out with all these excuses, and I wondered in that trilogy fight would he have a come to Jesus moment in it, in which he says Fury cheated, all this, that and the other. Eventually he gets hit with a shot and the reality hits in that he didn't cheat, that was all nonsense, and now I'm in a fight. I haven't improved and he has improved. It wasn't quite like that in the trilogy fight because Fury wasn't as up for it as he was the rematch. But I wonder, could something happen against Oleksandr Usyk? Fury tells himself, I won the fight. It was easy. It was all political. That's why I lost. It's this. He's a middleweight. He's this. Tell himself all that. Have his team say all that. And then in the ring, starts getting hit with body shots and left hands again. And then he has his come to Jesus moment where it's like, yeah, it's not my night. I'm serious. I think something like that might happen in the rematch. A lot of people are now asking the question, will the rematch actually happen? I would say it probably will. If I was a betting man, although saying that, I said that the fight would happen in December, didn't. Said it would happen in February, didn't. Did eventually happen in May. If I was a betting man, I would say it probably will happen. But I wouldn't begrudge someone turning around and saying, gee, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in December. Again, I wouldn't begrudge someone having that opinion. Certainly Fury's pulled out of enough fights. I think it probably will. Is it delusion with Fury or what is it? Or is he just trying to, I don't know. Is he trying to sell the fight? Is he trying to convince himself? Because again, I say, he does these things where he says he's a middleweight. Whenever cruiserweights have stepped up, they've been found wanting this, that and the other. He leaves out so much detail and he says it to people who are not going to question him as if he's just hoping to get validation. Fury has always come across as a confident individual. But the run up to the Usyk fight and now the way he's been talking post-fight, it's almost like, I've said at the time, it's like he's trying to talk himself confident. He's trying to list off reasons and look for external factors, people to just kind of validate his claims by saying, yeah, you're right, yeah, you're right, yeah, you're right. Because it seems like anyone who questions him, it's like, you can't see it, bye-bye, don't want to know. It's like you have to agree with what I say, and what I say is, Usyk's a middleweight, Usyk can't punch, Usyk can't do this, I'm the greatest. And if you don't agree with all them plus the rest, then we don't want to know. Well, mate, you're going to be living in the dream world if that's the case. You're living in an absolute dream world. And guess what happens when you live in that kind of dream world? When you do get brought back down to reality, you come down with a bang. Simple as. So Fury, if he goes through with this rematch and he has that in his head that Oleksandr Usyk is no good, that it was an easy fight, that I touched him up, I was hurting him, I broke his jaw, I cracked his eye socket or did something to his eye socket, it was easy, it was all political. If he really truly thinks that, when he gets into the ring on Fight Night come December, he is going to be brought down to earth, and he is going to come crashing down to earth. That's what I got to say on that one. And again, I don't want to labour the point here, but if the people in his team, Tommy Fury, John Fury, Sugar Hill Stewart, Andy Lee, etc., if they really had his best interest, they would bring him to one side and say, Tyson, I don't care if you hate me for saying this, but this is what happened. Accept it. Let's improve. Let's move on. Let's put the rematch to one side, or let's put the first fight to one side. Let's improve where we can improve, and let's try and win this rematch. Let's not kid ourselves and say, oh, we got robbed, it's all political, oh, it's all this, I'm the victim. No, you're not. You got beat by the better man, simple as. Try and say that, a member of Team Fury, and see how long you stay in the team. Because that's really what he needs to hear. Will he hear it? I doubt it. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Hope you a long one. Went on a bit long. I know, what can I say? Went on a bit long. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoy it. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. Peace.